Voldemort spent his whole life trying to outsmart death. But his biggest fear wasn't just the act of dying. It was the moment he realized his mortality was a hard, biological truth. He spent decades building an empire of terror just to hide from reality. At his core, even the most powerful wizard in history is just a fragile pile of bone and blood. We're often told the dark arts are some shifting, indestructible monster. But to Tom Riddle, that monster wasn't an enemy. It was a ladder, a quick way to climb far above the rest of humanity. Think about the Horcrux. In wizarding history, this was the ultimate taboo. Even the book Magic Most Evil refused to say how to make one. It was so dangerous, they kept it under lock and key. The author called the subject too wicked to write down. But Voldemort didn't care about warnings. He saw the rules as a personal challenge. To him, the line between life and death wasn't some sacred boundary. It was just a design flaw he was born to fix. That was his real ambition. He didn't care about the consequences of his experiments, even when they stripped away his humanity. By the time he hit his peak, the handsome, charismatic Tom Riddle was gone. The magic he wanted to control ended up erasing him. His face, once incredibly striking, was shed like a snakeskin. It left behind a reptilian, inhuman shell. He literally paid for his power with his own face. But he didn't care. To him, losing his humanity was a cheap price for living forever. But look at the things he chose to hold his soul. They weren't random. They were trophies. Slytherin's locket, Hufflepuff's cup, Ravenclaw's diadem. Every single one was a relic of his heritage. He saw them as physical anchors to a greatness he deserved by birthright. He didn't want to just survive. He wanted to live forever as a monument. Binding his soul to these treasures made sure he'd stay at the center of wizarding history forever. It was pure vanity, a desperate play to force the world to look at him, even after his heart stopped beating. But that vanity was exactly what ruined him. It was a massive, arrogant mistake. He assumed that since he was the only one who figured out Horcruxes, no one else could understand how to destroy them. He hid the locket in a dark cave guarded by Inferi. It was a terrifying psychological trap meant to keep everyone out. But he missed the one thing he always ignored. He forgot about simple loyalty. He underestimated a house elf like Creature and the quiet, desperate bravery of Regulus Black. Voldemort only understood power. He never realized that quiet devotion could walk right past his dark security systems. Okay, when Voldemort ran into the protection Lily Potter left on her son, he didn't realize it was a stronger kind of magic. He couldn't. He was so obsessed with control that his mind was broken. To him, love was just a weakness, a soft lie told by weak people who couldn't do what needed to be done. Since he couldn't understand it, he couldn't plan for it. That was his one real blind spot, a massive hole in his strategy that caused his entire downfall in 1981. He stood in that nursery in Godric's Hollow, staring at a mother willing to die for her baby. She didn't have a wand or some complex spell. She had none of the tools he thought he needed to win. So he laughed. He killed her. But that act triggered the exact magic that blew his body apart and cast his soul into the dark for 13 years. He didn't lose because of weakness. He lost because he was narrow-minded. He thought winning meant being the most dangerous person around. He never realized the most dangerous person is the one with nothing left to lose. He was absolutely terrified of death. That's the single, gnawing truth at the heart of his entire existence. He saw dying as an embarrassing, shameful human weakness, something completely beneath him. He spent his life running from the inevitable, trying to outsmart nature itself. Think about this. If Voldemort stood in front of a Boggart, it wouldn't turn into some monster. It would turn into his own cold, pale corpse. It would show his own rotting, lifeless end. He spent decades surrounded by Inferi, armies of reanimated corpses. He kept the dead close just to avoid joining them. He messed with the mechanics of life and death, convinced he was the pioneer who finally solved the puzzle. But he was just a man building a sandcastle, terrified of the tide, yet choosing to live right where the waves hit the hardest. Look at how he returned in that graveyard at Little Hangleton. He didn't want a quiet comeback. He wanted a show. He made his followers watch him rise from the cauldron like a dark god. He forced Harry to watch too, to carry the terrifying news back. Voldemort was obsessed with his own myth. He constantly polished his image as an invincible Dark Lord. But look at his hands. They were pale, spider-like, and shaking just to hold his body together. He was a fake, held together by dark magic. The irony here is brutal. By trying so hard to run from death, he ended up living in its shadow. He wanted to avoid the shame of dying, but he turned himself into a pathetic fragment of a soul. He became a parasite, living off snake venom and the fear of his followers. He did all of this because he was too terrified to just let go. The Battle of Hogwarts showed exactly how terrified he was. By 1998, Voldemort wasn't fighting for some grand cause. He was fighting for his life. His Horcruxes were being destroyed one by one, and his confidence started to fall apart. When he found out Harry Potter was hunting his soul anchors, he panicked. He didn't act like a cool, calm strategist. He acted like a cornered animal. He lashed out, destroyed his own treasures, and killed his own servants. His rage was just pure terror. When he finally faced Harry in the Great Hall, they didn't trade massive, epic spells. This was a clash of ideas. Voldemort had the Elder Wand, the legendary weapon of ultimate power. He assumed the wand would obey him because he was the master of death. But the Elder Wand is fickle. It didn't care about dark magic. It only responded to the person who actually won its allegiance by disarming the previous owner. Voldemort tried to command the wand to kill, but it refused to betray its real master. His final killing curse bounced right back and hit him. It was a brutal, inevitable end. He died exactly how he lived. He tried to bend the universe to his will, and he got crushed by the basic laws of magic he refused to respect. He didn't fear the dark. He didn't care about the judgment of the wizarding world. He just feared the death of his own ego. He was terrified of the silence that would follow when people stopped whispering his name. He wanted to be a permanent god among men. But in the end, he was just a man, and he died the exact same way he was born, alone and completely mortal. He walked into the dark, convinced he was the absolute master of it. He was dead wrong. He was just another victim of the one thing he could never beat. He was the boy who lived in fear, the man who died in denial, and his legacy was eventually reduced to nothing more than a simple cautionary tale. It's a story told to kids to remind them that no matter how much power you hoard, and no matter how many high walls you build, death is the only truth that can never be rewritten. He left behind no great works, no lasting peace, and absolutely no love. He left only the cold, empty silence of a life spent running away from the only thing that actually mattered.